Canadian Nuclear Laboratories' proposal for a near-surface disposal facility, or NSDF, is a responsible solution for low-level waste that will be generated from the cleanup mission at Chalk River. Let's move this environmental solution forward. Say yes to NSDF. Visit the Virtual Visitor Centre at engagewithcnl.ca/NSDF to learn more and how you can support this initiative. We encourage you to have your say.
Hello, welcome to the Construction Record Express. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me today I have
Staff writer at the Journal of Commerce, Russell Hixson, once again for my East Vancouver bedroom studio. We're expecting thunderstorms today, so batten down the hatches.
if you're in Vancouver, which I am.
If you're in Vancouver, yeah.
So what is happening in the West?
This week, I'm going to be writing about creative sentencing. I'm speaking with some researchers out of Alberta, some academics who are studying companies that have been found guilty of serious safety violations, and they've been sentenced to fines or whatever. And they are looking at if that impacts their safety record, years later. So are monetary fines effective at producing a safer industry? And so I'm going to be speaking to them about their research and their point. They believe that having more creative sentencing rather than just a monetary fine, it produces better safety results. So, getting companies to implement safety programs, forcing them to spend money on retraining or more specific things, they argue can have much better results. And I'm going to be getting more information on that. Even today, I'll be interviewing some of the researchers. And I think it's kind of interesting since, we are always covering some very serious safety incidents. Even this week, I just covered a company that exposed workers to asbestos, and they received a fine, and then they received a 3-year ban from doing business. Does that work? Is that kind of punishment effective at not just deterring people from, committing safety violations, but, impacting their behavior going forward after they, are found guilty of something? So I think it's definitely interesting and very pertinent for the construction sector to find out what works, what causes the best result, what produces a safer industry. Is just slapping people with a fine the best way to go? Or do we need to think more deeply about how we punish companies found guilty of serious safety violations?
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm going to be chatting with an architect who's been working on the Pendennis Hotel in Edmonton, and they're finding a ton of artifacts. And he's been writing essays about it. I read through some of it on his website. I believe his name is Dave Murray. He's an architect out of Edmonton, and he's just been going through these artifacts and just learning a bit more about what life was like in the 19th century in Alberta. He was even talking about this device with all these hooks in it, and they didn't know what it was, and eventually they figured out it's a pitter for cherries. It takes the pits out of cherries. And he was just talking about in his blog on his website what that says about what life was like in Edmonton back in the day. People sitting around eating these cherries that had been imported. So I don't know. It should be interesting to see how this kind of accidental archaeology comes about when you're working on some of these old restoration projects. And I'm looking forward to chatting with him hopefully sometime this week.
And from the East, and in what I hope will be a recurring occurrence, but circumstances allowing, we have Lindsey Cole, the daily editor of the Daily Commercial News and the Journal of Commerce. Welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you, Warren. Yes, I hope to be a regular appearance as well. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And this is usually where I launch into what stories we've got going on. So I have you to do that. What stories are happening from the East?
Yeah, actually, we've got some really interesting stuff on the go. Don Wall recently reported on and has been, frankly, following it up almost daily, if not every other day. current agreements and strike votes and the like that you can associate with bargaining that's taking place here in Ontario. So basically, under Ontario law, contracts in the ICI sector, the unionized ICI sector, expire on April 30th. So essentially, we've got a couple more weeks to go. But as it rolls out, the various trades and the unions associated and the employer agencies associated with those trades are trying to reach agreements pertaining to wages, benefits, apprentice packages, incentives, things like that. And it's kind of funny to see the evolution. So when Don first started reporting on this, I believe it might have been late March, agreements were starting to be reached. Typically, the electrical sector does come out of the gate first, and they did so this year, and reached a decent agreement where there was, wage increases over, I think, 3 years and something to that effect. So it's kind of started off a little bit smooth. And then as we got into April, negotiations start to get a little less smooth. So basically, we're down to the wire now, and we're seeing that there's been a couple of strike votes that have been carried out. So one of the bigger unions, the Carpenters Local, or the Carpenters Union, excuse me, is planning to do a strike vote as well. They're holding votes across the province beginning today, actually, which is April 19th, and then over a period of 8 days. So we're going to see what that means. Obviously, if their members agree to a strike vote, we could see if labor negotiations don't go well, we could see some job action there. So it's an exciting time to be a reporter and writing on that. And I have to give Don tons of kudos for all of his efforts there, because there's a lot of sectors and a lot of things to follow up on. So it's certainly an evolving piece and something that is really important to the industry. So in a time where inflation, supply chain issues, and skilled trade shortages are prevalent, there's a lot of discussions revolving around that. So I'm eager to see what happens with the carpenters and some other unions to see where things go. So stay tuned, I guess, on that one.
You also have a high-tech story. Maybe you go into that.
Yeah, I will. So it's actually kind of an interesting juxtaposition. So it's the first ever 3D printed residential project. Now, it is apparently 4 self-contained tiny homes. So it's kind of I'd like to say it's tiny, but it's still groundbreaking and massive and monumental in what it could shape for the future. So it's really interesting. It's being built in Leamington, Ontario. It's not a relatively huge place, but kind of just a really neat story that one of our freelancers, Grant Cameron, wrote about. And it's in partnership with the University of Windsor and Invest Windsor Essex. So they also used virtual reality modeling to help with the planning. So it's a really encapsulates a lot of evolving technologies that may be utilized to help, if it's successful and everything goes well, all of these technologies could rope themselves together to help solve some of the housing crisis that we have here in Ontario, across the country, obviously, but this is specifically targeted in Ontario. So it was really cool. And the guy in the story just kind of described it as, a bigger version of a 3D printer that you'd use in general, but it's doing these homes. So I definitely recommend giving that a read, because it's just an interesting technology that we are seeing come to the fore in Canada more than we have in the past. So pretty cool.
And if you'd like to hear more of TCR Express or the Construction Record podcast, you can listen to us on Amazon Music, Apple Music, and Spotify, or on the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce websites. Thanks for listening.